You wouldn't have that. So scientists today don't really think that Darwin's basic idea is essentially still workable at all. There's just way too much going on. Plus the math argument is that for the amount of time that life has existed on the Earth, it couldn't possibly have evolved with all the different combinations that would have been required for things to have developed. And in fact, there's still no answer to how life actually got started. Even though one of my favorite biologists and philosophers, Stuart Kaufman, feels that you get life for free. Once nature gets complex enough, the carbons and everything get complex enough, you end up then with life as just happening because of the complexity of things. But how long would that have taken? Just an incredible amount of time for stuff to have evolved. In other words, there's something else going on in the minds of science today that says there's some kind of maybe not top-down, intelligent designer kind of thing, but there's something in all of these little animals that gives them direction and that enables them to be prepared for the changes in environment that's going to occur, so that you have the birds with the right beaks, etc., for the kind of fruits that will be available for them. That's fascinating. So it is interesting that we're not saying this is a miracle, that all this can be explained that way, but actually it feels very close to that. Remember my favorite explanation for what's going on in the mind, the orchestrated objective reduction theory, which presupposes not only do we have a neural network which is doing all sorts of things in complexity, but we also have microtubules within which you have quarks that are literally quantum machines, so that contemporary science can't quite explain how quarks do things, because they're not logical. They're in and out of existence. They're able to have two states at once. The famous, is the cat alive or dead? We can't know until we look. Once we look, well, then it's either alive or dead. But, it was both while we weren't looking, and so on. And that's not just true of the cat, that's true of all of our decisions. All the things that we're involved in doing ourselves, those are in that same kind of quantum state. And that seems magical. It's not quite a miracle, but on the other hand, it doesn't seem to be the same kind of logical, deterministic, step-by-step procedure, because we don't know what makes a decision. So the language games associated with these sciences have changed since Wittgenstein. But in any case, Wittgenstein is famous for giving us two different philosophical approaches to things. The one is called language analysis, and the other one is ordinary language analysis. The difference is that ordinary language looks at language the way it really is, the way people really use it in practice, instead of the kind of language that Bertrand Russell had created in his Principia Mathematica. So you instead have people that are evolving their meanings as they go. And you could look at, especially today with the various media that we have, that everyone uses and creates new words. We can talk about woke, what woke means and where it came from, and how, as John McWhorter points out, that in just a few years it changed meaning drastically depending on who was using it and in what context, etc. But there are rules, or we wouldn't be able to understand one another when we were talking. And those statements that we make are understandable because we are following the rules that we all share with regard to the kinds of statements we can make in this particular context. So there is something that gives it stability, and yet it can also be dynamic. So it's an organic thing. It's not something that's like a mechanical a machine. It's more like an organic machine, if you want to call it that. So Ludwig Wittgenstein gives us both of these. His second book, which emphasized the language game perspective, was Philosophical Investigations. It was published after his death, as well as a bunch of other books. If you go to the bookstore, you can see Wittgenstein on grammar, Wittgenstein on you name it. There's about 7 or 8 topics, mathematics and so on. But what those books have done is gone through his other notes and things and taken out the comments he's made on all those subjects and put those in one book. And I think quite a lot of it is online anyway, so I'm not sure about what the point would be in going to a paper copy of a book, unless you really like those things, which I know I'm addicted, and I have them. My wife does too. Heck, I just bought 2 books coming up. One I wanted to buy was Liz Cheney's book. I wanted to read that, and that's not even out yet, but will be out in a couple days, I guess. And then the other one was the current book for my book group, which is so new, the Covenant of Water. Have you heard of it? Still only in hardback, but so I'm addicted to books. Wittgenstein was certainly interesting. If you're curious about his life, I recommend Ray Monk's biography of Wittgenstein. Ray Monk is a British professor, author, who not only wrote about Wittgenstein, it's called Wittgenstein, The Duty of Genius. And then he wrote a 2-volume work on Bertrand Russell, which I also highly recommend, even though the second volume, you could tell he's more and more disgusted with Russell. First volume, Russell, absolutely amazing. The second volume, he's into sex and, all kinds of things that are like, ugh, and so, very different second volume. But he's also done a biography of Oppenheimer, which, considering how interested a lot of people are in Oppenheimer, his book on Oppenheimer is definitely well worth going. By the way, I noticed in listening to some of my lectures, because I do listen to them to see what the heck I said, and I noticed in one of them that I mentioned Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, and he died the next day? I don't know if you noticed, but that's kind of impressive. 100 years old, and you get lots of. My favorite article on him was by Nicholas Kristof, and he pointed out that his critics criticize him for these things, and those who consider him an idol praise him for these things. So that's a sneaky way out of not praising him or criticizing him by just talking about those who criticize him and praise him. And escape taking sides. That's a terrific way of doing that. Okay. So, what else can we say about Wittgenstein? Lots. The blue and brown books were his notes dedicated to his class. So again, even though that's a book that's out there and it's kind of interesting, it's not necessarily anything new, really. In fact, it's kind of fun. There's a film on Wittgenstein. This is the trailer, I guess.
I love films, especially westerns and musicals. Carmen Miranda and Betty are two of my favorite actresses. I always sat in the front row. Film felt like a shower washing away the lecture. I hated the newsreels. Far too patriotic. I felt the makers must have been master pupils of Goebbels.
If people did not sometimes do silly things, nothing intelligent would ever get done. Hello, my name is Ludwig Wittgenstein. I am a prodigy. I'm going to tell you my story.
As you can see, it's a very strange movie. Here's a scene that
The best presents touch our hearts. Things that are handmade, personalized, and meaningful.
A dog cannot lie. Neither can he be sincere. A dog may be expecting his master to come. Why can't he be expecting him to come next Wednesday? Is it because he doesn't have language? If a lion could speak, we would not be able to understand what he said. Why do I say such a thing?
If we could understand him, I shouldn't think we'd have too much trouble with a lion.
It could get an interpreter. Do you mean for me or for the lion? Yes, yes.
that's supposed to be Bertrand Russell.
To what possible use would that be? To imagine a language is to imagine a form of life. It's what we do and who we are that gives meaning to our words. I can't understand a lion's language because I don't know what his word is like. How can I know the word a lion inhabits? Do I fail to understand him because I can't peer into his mind?
Some of the students that came out of his lectures, though, became famous themselves.
What's going on
So,
behind my words when I say, this is a very pleasant pineapple? Take your time.
The thought, Professor.
I see. What is the thought that lies behind the words, this is a very pleasant pineapple?
This is a very pleasant pineapple.
Listen to me. We imagine the meaning of what we say as something queer, mysterious, hidden from view. But nothing is hidden, everything is open to view. It's just philosophers who muddy the waters.
Professor Wittgenstein, you can't know this pain. Only I can.
Are you sure you know? You don't doubt you had a pain yourself?
How could I?
But if we can't speak of doubt here, we can't speak of knowledge either.
I don't follow.
It makes no sense to speak of knowing something in a context where we could not possibly doubt it. Therefore, to say, I know I am in pain is entirely senseless. When you want to know the meaning of a word, don't look inside yourself. Look at the uses of the word in our way of life.